Hello and welcome to News Laundry. We are thrilled to have with us Dr. Jeffrey Wigand, who is a very accomplished man in other ways, as you will discover during this interview. But I'll start with what he's best known for, which is blowing the whistle on big tobacco in the US, and the film The Insider was made on your life and your experiences. Before we get on to the rest, you are called by many as one of the most important people in the last many decades to have blown the whistle on one of the most corrupt practices in the US. Are you flattered by that description of yourself?
I think that's a factual answer. I don't think it's just the U.S. I think it's worldwide in scope, because the tobacco industry is a worldwide business, and but I think I would say it's probably one accomplishment I'm proud of. There are others. My daughter's graduating school. I mean, having my daughter. I mean, lots of other things. But I think in terms of my life experiences, this is one you can put on my tombstone.
I see. And are there any moments of regret? We'll get into the details of it later, but the film demonstrated, and I have, you shared your experiences earlier in the day. It was a huge cost to you emotionally, personally. Today you can say that you can leave it on my tombstone, but was there any moment of doubt when you said, oh shit, I've bitten off more than I can chew. Can I follow through with this?
Oh, well, I mean, if I told you there were no dark moments, I wouldn't be telling. There were dark moments. This is a fight I started by myself. There were many people who did not want to be near me during the process. It cost me a divorce. That wasn't a great moment. I thought that at least if any place I was a safe haven would have been my home. But in the end, I mean, I have no compunction of what I've done. And I believe what I've done is what we would call a right decision. It has all the moral characteristics of right. And I, without hesitation, would most certainly do it again. So, I mean, I don't feel uncomfortable with where we are today as a result of it. While there were uncomfort zones, they tend not to stay forefront in my mind right now. I mean, it's the pleasure of understanding and seeing change in how the tobacco industry operates. It's seeing how the industry is being held accountable for its decades of fraud and selling a product that they knowingly knew when users intended was killing people and innocent bystanders for money. So, yes, I feel there was some dark moments, but I think they've gone. I don't reflect back on them.
But the battle isn't over either, because you're part of many litigation cases happening regarding tobacco. You are still not outside the battle. It still continues.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody is ever prepared, either by a book or by experience, for this type of thing. I mean, as I understand it, it was a selfless act. It was putting the interests of others before my own interests. And there are many people who have done that. I mean, I think Gandhi did it. I think Christ did it. I think a lot of other people have put themselves in a selfless mood for others. I don't think I'm anywhere near a Gandhi or a Kennedy or a Tolstoy or anybody. I think what was accomplished was that I found my moral compass.
Did you feel you had lost your moral compass at some point in your career?
Did I lose it? No, I think I was caught in a position of balancing my hierarchy of values. And that means that I made choices that at that time and that moment were most important to me, and that was my children's safety and children's health.
Actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you before we get into that because I want to get into the details of that. We just let our viewers know, if you could succinctly just explain to the viewers, many of them have seen the film and have read about you, what is it that you exactly did, if you were to simply put it to our viewer, that you blew the whistle on Big Tobacco's research that showed that they were delivering poison and they had hushed it up. You could just tell us what is it that you did?
I was the first senior executive of a tobacco company to bring to the public the true secrets of how the tobacco industry operated and its disregard for public health and safety through numerous different ways. Some of it was direct fraud, which they have been now convicted of being a fraudulent industry. An industry now is compared to an organized crime industry. And that's what I saw. And I think...
And how do they commit this fraud? And the kind of information they give, the messaging?
They ask people to believe something they themselves did not believe.
Such as?
Like nicotine's not addictive, it's there for taste. Smoking's more dangerous than eating Twinkies.
That was accepted at one point, that smoking is no more dangerous than eating Twinkies?
Oh, that was what was accepted within the domain of the company. It was something they would never share outside the company. And therefore, I felt there was sort of a bipolar or a schizophrenic type environment. They understood one mantra, yet they would only talk a different mantra outside. And so when I was involved in the company, I saw many deeds and actions that caused me considerable unrest, like smuggling genetically engineered tobacco seed, lawyers destroying documents that were tell the truth, lawyers shipping documents overseas so they couldn't be discovered in litigation.
What was your role in the company when you hired?
They hired me out of the healthcare industry to use my medical and scientific skills to take a product they knew, when used as intended, killed and addicts. I was to look for ways to make it, quote, safer but not safe. So that's one. Number two is...
Safer but not safe.
Not safe. There'll never be a safe tobacco product. Never.
It will always be unsafe, but
Never.
it's a question of...
Nicotine by itself is a poison. Nicotine changes cellular function. So there'll never be a safe nicotine delivery device, whether it's a burning device or an electronic device.
And before you joined Brown and Williamson, you were in the pharmaceutical
I was in the
industry.
pharmaceutical, diagnostics, healthcare industry for some 25 years.
And they wanted you to do research to make a safer cigarette.
They wanted me to lead a group that would produce a product that was safer and that they could go to the Food and Drug Administration with claims. I had extensive experience with applications with the Food and Drug Administration. And so I had that capacity. I also was to change an organization that was fundamentally empirically based, that needed to become science-based. That is, they did lots of trial and error and lots of loss of time. I got to move, my family out of a New York City area to Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, but the primary thing, and I have to say also, let me back up a little bit. I mean, I got paid well. Right. I mean, it was,
You're honest enough to admit that was one of the reasons why you joined the tobacco industry from a healthcare industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the calculus. I mean, to tell you that I did it just for that, it would not be honest. But yes, the money played a role. The full healthcare benefits for my daughter played a large role. Moving my family out of the New York City area with a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old close to their grandparents in Louisville, Kentucky was the technical challenge of doing something that would save lives. I mean, you put all that together and you do the calculus on it, and I said it was worth the risk.
How did you view the tobacco industry before you joined Brown and Williamson, and how did you view it once you were an insider?
Well, I most certainly knew...
You've never smoked?
No. I certainly knew tobacco was harmful. I certainly knew nicotine was addictive. And being in a scientific medical environment, that's common knowledge among those who had studied. What I saw inside the industry was probably the most strident form of duplicity. That is, they had this schizophrenic mental attitude that we can't ever completely disclose to the public to enable them to make responsible choices because we don't share the full facts and truth with them. And that, in both legal terms and in practical terms, is called fraud. Fraud is asking you to believe something I myself do not believe. And so they were asking people to believe that nicotine was not addictive, that if you choose to smoke and you get addicted, that's the taste. Well, that was not the understanding or the belief system within the company. Right. So, I saw duplicity at many levels.
You joined Brown and Williamson in '89, and the famous CBS interview happened in '95.
August 5th, 1995.
How did you rationalize not making all that you knew public for 4.5 or 5 years? And what changed your mind? When did you decide to say, you know what, the world should know this?
I don't want to use the word rationale, because I can't characterize it as a single event. I mean, it was not an epiphany. It was a gradual evolvement that I needed to do something other than be quiet, bystander. Whether it was standing up in front of Congress and swearing under oath, what I saw in the documents that in the Philip Morris ABC case, the 7 JAMA articles of the documents that were removed from Brown and Williamson and published by a cardiologist at UC San Francisco, Stan Glantz, which actually I asked to see when I was at the company, and I never got to see. And then I saw him as a referee, the articles. Okay. And I realized as I continued going that I was not really walking the talk. I was trying to teach my children honesty, integrity, truthfulness, etc. And was I really doing what I was teaching? And so at the end, I decided in conjunction with my family that I would go public with CBS 60 Minutes, which would provide me the best, I guess, cover as a public figure. I would then not be so susceptible to harm. I mean, I did many covert things before I did that. I mean, I worked with the Food and Drug Administration secretly, and my code name was Research. I worked with the FBI and the DOJ and the DEA on looking at the perjury issue of and how cigarettes were made. I worked with the litigation between ABC and Philip Morris as an expert. I did the work for CBS 60 Minutes on fire-safe cigarettes or reduced ignition propensity cigarettes that really irked me, made me angry, that they were so callous that they had something in their hands and on the shelf that could save lives, and they didn't make it available to people.
And 6 million people a year die of tobacco-related diseases.
Today is about 6 million people that do not have to die.
Right. Now, if you could also just, for our viewers, relate to us the circumstances that led to the famous CBS interview, which was not aired initially. We'll come to that later. But before the CBS interview really happened, you had already kind of started blowing the whistle on big tobacco.
I was doing it covertly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was acting as an expert witness in the litigation. I was teaching the FDA information that allowed them to do their jurisdictional document.
And your former company got to know about this.
Yeah, and everybody. I was working with journalists, helping them interpret documents that were leaked out and what they meant in terms of the taxonomy and the coding in it. And so ultimately I decided on August 5th, 1995, that I would take everything public. But, and I did that with a certain degree of caveats. That is, I would maintain custody and control of the taping until such time as I've had a lawyer, and I was financially prepared to deal with the onslaught.
Which would be what?
Well, being sued.
We'll come to that. What are the other two caveats?
And I did that with that understanding. And I did it with the understanding of my ex-wife, and we did it on August 5th. They vetted it. They researched every part of it that I gave them. And then in October of 1995, I would say all hell broke loose. And not all that hell was that CBS was in the process of being acquired by General Electric. General Electric was going to buy CBS, but it was really going to buy Lowe's Corporation. Lowe's Corporation also owned a tobacco company. And the CEO of the tobacco company had also been one of the 7 CEOs in the April 1994 testimony.
And the April 1994 testimony is the one where 7 CEOs of Big Tobacco swore under oath that there's nothing harmful about tobacco.
Yeah, nicotine wasn't addictive, smoking was no more dangerous than eating Twinkies.
So one of the CEOs who was part of that oath was also the CEO of a company that would to acquire CBS, to whom you had given the interview.
No. Part of CBS corporate parent was Lowe's Corporation. Lowe's Corporation was the Tisch family. The Tisch family had many holdings. One of those holdings was Lorillard Tobacco Company. The other holding was CBS News. Okay?
Right.
And as Lorillard Tobacco Company was one of the 7 companies brought in front of the U.S. Congress, they were also now being pursued or investigated by the Department of Justice for perjury. So you have that there. Then at the same time, you have the U.S. General Electric wanting to buy the whole company. And then also at the same time, you had Brown and Williamson conducting a product transfer of $300 million to Lorillard. That is, okay? And then they also have in the bag, so to speak, this extensive interview with me for 60 minutes. Some way or another, and I don't understand how it happened, Brown and Williamson learned of the interview.
Obviously leaked from...
Okay. And as soon as they learned of the interview, they threatened CBS 60 Minutes with a lawsuit which is based on a legal principle of tortious interference. That is, CBS 60 Minutes interfered with a contract that I had in terms of gaining news. As I said today, I mean, it'd be hard to have any journalists around that weren't getting something of newsworthy without having somebody to talk to. And then the whole transcript of the interview leaked out of CBS. I was sued immediately.
From Brown and Williamson.
From Brown and Williamson, either late October, early November, for violation of my fiduciary responsibility, violation of my confidentiality agreement on trade secrets, and they stopped my health care coverage, and they stopped my salary continuation.
Which they were contractually obliged to.
Which were contractually obliged to do. At the same time, the litigation of the states was starting to begin.
The litigation of states against tobacco.
The states started to think about suing the tobacco industry to recover costs associated with treating sick smokers by the state. It's called Medicaid. And the first state to do it was Mississippi. Okay? And that litigation was just starting to catch momentum. And I received a subpoena from the U.S. Department of Justice on the whole issue I did for 60 Minutes in January 1994 on fire-safe cigarettes, which I was paid for as a consultant. And I agreed, in principle, to accept the invitation from the U.S. government. It's called a civil investigative demand. Would be go down to Mississippi, Pascagoula, Mississippi, and give testimony on fire-safe cigarettes.
So just for our viewers, a fire-safe cigarette is a cigarette that, because cigarettes cause forest fires, they cause a lot of
Yes.
property damage. So there is a technology where they're trying to bring down the combustion temperature of a cigarette so that even if it does fall, it doesn't.
Yeah, what it was a cigarette that had speed bumps in it of paper.
Okay.
And if you had the speed bumps, it'd come along, and unless it was puffed on, no oxygen would come in, and therefore it would self-extinguish.
Right.
And so it's really improper to call them fire safe. It's what is proper to call them reduced ignition propensity.
Right.
Reduced ability to start a fire. And when I went down to Mississippi, I was served a subpoena by the state of Mississippi to testify in their state action.
The state action was on the health issues of cigarettes.
Yes. And the government was looking at fire-safe cigarette issue,
Right.
or reduced ignition. I provided testimony to the U.S. government in the morning. And while I was providing testimony to the U.S. government, Brown and Williamson got a contempt order, which meant when I went back to Kentucky, I was most likely going to go to jail. They tried to quash or stop the deposition, and they got a judge to actually allow the deposition or testimony to be sealed in the Chancery Court. That day was, there must have been 50 tobacco lawyers in the room, and actually Ron Motley, who was my attorney, who just recently died 2 weeks ago, was the one that was taking the testimony. That testimony I gave under oath in Mississippi was almost identical to what I had given and spoke to CBS 60 Minutes. So now what was given freely before, now I'm giving
Under oath, in a
Under
court
oath.
of law.
Okay. That was a crazy day.
And that's what you meant when all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
They sued you, they had a contempt case against
Yes.
you, and they did all they could to shut you up, that
Yes.
you will not talk about what happens in Big Tobacco.
Yes.
And even the CBS interview was kind of nixed. It didn't make it on air until much later. We'll come to that.
Yes, and I will get to that. So what I mentioned that the testimony in Pascagoula was sealed, that means nobody could see it. It couldn't be released to the public. And so only a select few people, lawyers, various tobacco companies had it, and the plaintiff side had it, the state side had it. I went back I spent a lot of time after Ron Motley told me that I was likely to go to jail when I went home. Kind of really gave me a little bit of chill, because I didn't want to go into a Kentucky jail, especially since I had not become a favorite son in Kentucky by doing what I had done to one of their favorite industries, tobacco. I went ahead because I believed at the time that I had already paid the price of intimidation, and I wasn't going to be intimidated any longer, and that if I didn't go forward that day and at that time, they would probably tie me up in the courts forever.
You explained how they intimidate you legally by, slapping a case of a multi-billion-dollar suing you for breach of
Contract.
confidentiality. What are the other ways that they intimidated you? Like, we've all seen the film that there was a bullet in your mailbox.
That was afterwards. That
Yeah.
was January 1996.
Right, that came much later.
later.
But what are the other tactics that they used to intimidate you when they knew that you're going to go public with this?